Hello, this is Bobby Capuccio. Yesterday, I had the opportunity to meet with one of my good friends and colleagues in the fitness industry, probably one of my favorites, Annette Lang. I have quite a few stories that I love to tell about Annette, but perhaps one of my favorite goes back to 2008, the Meeting of the Minds event in Keystone, Colorado. Now, at Meeting of the Minds, we gathered nearly 24 of who are arguably the best and the brightest in the fitness industry to come in and talk about what's new, what advice they would give, what they're working on. It was kind of like a TED.com for the fitness industry before there was even a TED.com. Now, Annette Lang took the stage, and within her 20 minutes, she had the audacity to declare that if she had a client, and she told a story about an actual client she did have that fit into this exact scenario, who was pursuing a fitness goal, who was quite unsuccessful in the past, who was, needless to say, less than enthusiastic about exercise as a whole, but she had the habit also of smoking and eating cookies. And Annette said that she permitted the client to continue to do so. So she didn't try to discourage her. As a matter of fact, she didn't really give her a hard time about it. And a lot of the people in the audience might have viewed that as a bit of imprudence. Because if a client isn't willing to change what they eat, how they train, and how they live to our standards, well, they may lack the discipline and mental fortitude to achieve their goals. And that is inarguably the truth. Or is it? Another way of looking at this is that maybe Annette Lang, as a result of her many years of experience, skill, and genuine empathy for the individual, understands something that was demonstrated decades ago by researchers Freedman and Frasier. This piece of research was so important that me and my co-author, Pete Cohn, in our book Shut the Duck Up, dedicated an entire chapter to it. In 1966, psychologists Jonathan Freedman and Scott Frasier conducted a couple of experiments in the Palo Alto area of California. In one such experiment, they went door to door in the community, asking homeowners if they would be willing to place this huge, ugly white sign with red block letters that read, "Drive carefully," on their front lawn. Only 17% of the homeowners who were asked to post this absolutely hideous sign on their front lawn to increase awareness of driver safety in their community agreed to do so. In the second part of that experiment, Freedman and Frasier knocked on doors within the same area in that community, only this time the request to display the sign was preceded with a much smaller request. What's interesting is that the request in some cases wasn't even directly related to driver safety. It was related to some other issue, such as, environmental safety. Nonetheless, when the request was preceded by a much smaller request, 76% of everyone who was asked to put the large, hideous sign on their front lawn complied. 17% to 76%. That is significant, to say the least. In addition to being a well-respected leader and accomplished trainer, Annette Lang is highly competent in the facilitation of behavioral change. She understands that in reality, people do things not for our reasons, but for their own. When you ask somebody to take one small action that is, first of all, within their perceived scope of capability, and secondly, consistent with the self-image that they desire to portray, they are far more likely to make larger and more frequent concessions that benefit them in the future. So again, all requests that we make to the client has to be, initially anyway, one, within their perceived scope of capability, and number two, it has to be consistent with the self-image that they desire to portray, not how we want them to behave or who we'd like them to be. Now, and when that happens, when you match your request with their scope of capability and desired self-image, they're far more likely to make larger and more frequent concessions. So let's get back to the case of Freedman and Frasier. when a homeowner agreed to a seemingly inconsequential request related to driver safety in the environment. His compliance supported his self-image as a conscientious, caring, and generally good citizen. So it was easy for that person to feel good about himself. And because the request didn't pose any risk and it was relatively easy to fulfill, it set him up to be more agreeable to future requests. Now, to deny a larger request would immediately contradict a part of his self-image that he felt good about now. So it became harder to say no than to say yes, which in the first scenario, before the precedingly small request was made, just the opposite was true. So the trainer who demands an all-or-nothing approach or an all-or-nothing methodology from his or her clients might feel self-assured that what they're doing is right. However, the trainer who understands the progressive nature of behavior modification is far more likely to incrementally assist his clients in the transformation that affects self-esteem and therefore permeates into multiple aspects of that client's life. What's even more powerful is the fact that in the later approach, his clients will believe that it was they who autonomously chose to change, just like in Freedman and Frasier's experiment, it was the homeowner who believed that they were acting autonomously, rather than, on the other hand, assuming that their behaviors were an obligatory response to external directives given to them by their trainer, which means that their changes are likely to be more enduring because, as I think I alluded to a little bit earlier, people have a desire for consistency between their current actions and past decisions. Now, there are 7 questions that we need to ask our clients when coaching them to achieve what they can in the present, despite events that cause them to believe that they might not have been capable in the past. Question number 1. What do you believe is the greatest strength you possess that defines you as a person? And the second part of that question is, what would that type of person possessing that strength do when faced with the challenges you face today? Number 2, what is quintessentially most important to you about making these changes? Question number 3, what one small thing related to your health and fitness goal do you believe is within your ability to control, regardless of how insignificant it may seem? Question 4, what one thing do you believe could occur that may potentially interfere with you achieving your goal? And number 5, if that occurs, what's the worst possible thing that could result? Sometimes the worst possible thing that could possibly result is far less threatening once we identify, crystallize, and then verbalize it to our coach. Question number 6, if that one thing does occur, what actions can you take or can we take together to help resolve it and keep moving on? And question number 7, what can we do to put the odds in our favor that number 1 worst case scenario won't even arise in the first place?